The morning started like any other, with the sun creeping over the horizon and a steaming mug of coffee in my hand. I was skimming the newspaper when I noticed a garish orange flyer plastered across my front door like a warning on a box of explosives. In bold, furious letters, it demanded, "Notice of removal. Your unauthorized crops must be cleared within 14 days or legal action will follow." I froze, blinking at the words, certain I'd misread them. But there they were, clear as day. A laugh burst out of me, sharp and disbelieving. Whoever thought they could order me a farmer on legally leased federal land to rip out my crops hadn't done their homework. The amusement faded fast, replaced by a slow-burning anger. Someone had just picked a fight they weren't ready for. By noon, the neighborhood was buzzing louder than a swarm of cicadas. Word spread that the HOA president, a woman named Deborah, had declared my cornfields an eyesore. Deborah, with her piercing voice and a penchant for control, believed the sight of my fields behind her pristine suburban homes was tanking property values. From my porch, I watched her march along the edge of my land, clipboard in hand, flanked by two board members like loyal henchmen. She wore a massive sun hat and sunglasses that screamed self-importance, gesturing wildly at my crops and ranting loud enough for me to hear every absurd word. She called my fields a neglected wasteland and claimed they threatened the community's aesthetic. She even said kids might get lost in the corn, as if my fields were some kind of rural labyrinth. I couldn't decide whether to laugh or yell. Enough was enough. I set my coffee down and strolled toward her. The moment Deborah saw me, she stiffened, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline. Her lackey stepped back, eyeing me like I was about to draw a six-shooter. "Good afternoon," I said, keeping my tone even. Deborah launched into a lecture about HOA landscaping rules, insisting my fields visible from their precious roads fell under her jurisdiction. I asked, as calmly as I could, how her rules applied to agricultural land leased by the federal government for over 7 decades. She didn't flinch, declaring with unshakable confidence that her HOA's authority trumped all. That's when I knew reason wouldn't work. This wasn't about logic, it was about power. I smiled, the kind of smile you give someone who's just vowed to wrestle a bear. I informed her that my land was part of a federal program for agricultural preservation and veteran support. If she touched a single stalk, she'd face consequences she couldn't imagine. Her eyes narrowed, but I could tell she thought I was bluffing. That evening, a notice slipped under my door invited me to an emergency HOA meeting to vote on removing my crops. I stared at the paper, marveling at their audacity. My farm sat half a mile outside their neighborhood's boundaries, yet they acted like feudal lords claiming my land. That night, I sat on my porch, watching the cornfields glow gold in the sunset. This land wasn't just dirt, it was history. My father farmed it, his father before him, and now it served veterans healing through agriculture. Deborah had no idea what she'd stirred up. I sipped my coffee and made a silent vow. If she wanted war, I'd fight on my terms, quiet, legal, and devastating. The next evening, the air was thick with humidity as I pulled my rattling truck into the community clubhouse lot, surrounded by gleaming SUVs. Residents shot me curious, nervous, or hostile glances as I tipped my hat and walked inside. The room was packed with folding chairs facing a table where Deborah and her board sat like judges at a kangaroo court. Deborah, in a crisp white blazer, banged a gavel with the pomp of a dictator. She announced we were there to address the violation posed by my farmland, unveiling a poster board with photos of my fields circled in red like crime scene evidence. She ranted about obstructed views, rodents, and plummeting home values, pure nonsense delivered with theatrical flair. When she opened the floor, a few residents timidly questioned her authority over land outside the neighborhood. Deborah dismissed them, insisting the visual impact gave her rights. I saw my chance. Stepping to the front, I said, "For the record, this land is leased by the Department of Agriculture for a federal preservation program. It's protected. Your HOA has no jurisdiction, and you're harassing me and violating federal property rights." Silence gripped the room. Deborah's mouth twitched, but she plastered on a fake smile, suggesting a neighborly agreement. I smiled back. "Sure. You leave my land alone, or deal with the feds. Her face reddened, and she threatened to remove the crops herself and bill me. I nodded, promising to document every move for the Department of Agriculture and the sheriff. She slammed her gavel, ending the meeting before it unraveled further. The next few days brought escalation. Deborah sent a certified letter with a final warning. I framed it. I called my contact at the Department of Agriculture, a no-nonsense woman named Clara, who laughed so hard she nearly dropped the phone. She promised an inspector within days and hinted at criminal trespassing charges if Deborah acted. That evening, I caught Deborah's cronies creeping along my fence with surveying tools, staking out an imaginary boundary. My motion cameras later recorded Deborah herself sneaking onto my land at night, planting orange flags with spray paint. The footage was gold. I sent it to Clara and the sheriff with a polite note. Evidence of illegal activity on federal land. Please advise. The next morning, a landscaping crew roared in with weed whackers and chainsaws, Deborah strutting like a general. I watched from my porch, coffee in hand, and gave them 2 minutes before calling the sheriff. As the first blade hit a cornstalk, I dialed. The sheriff arrived to find half the neighborhood gawking. A towering man with a granite face, he listened to Deborah's screeching about aesthetics, then detained her for questioning. The workers dropped their tools and fled. I handed over my footage and the federal lease. The sheriff nodded, promising action. As Deborah was led away, I tipped my hat. The real consequences were coming. Deborah went quiet, but I knew she wasn't done. Clara warned that federal processes took time, but I was patient. One evening, my motion detectors pinged. A new landscaping crew, hired from 2 counties away, rolled in with heavy mowers. Deborah shouted orders, oblivious to the workers' confusion. I called Clara, who said, "Stay put. Agents are coming." I recorded everything. As the first blade touched my crops, government SUVs roared up, lights flashing. Department of Agriculture agents swarmed, joined by deputies. Deborah charged at them, waving her clipboard and screaming about her rights. A steely agent let her rant, then read her charges: trespassing, destruction of federal property, and interference with a federal program. Fines could reach the stratosphere, with jail time possible. Deborah's face crumpled, her reality shattering. She blamed everyone but herself, but the agents had footage, documents, and witnesses. They warned that further interference meant arrest. The crew fled, and Clara later confirmed the government would repair the damage and pursue Deborah personally, not the HOA. 2 nights later, footsteps on gravel woke me. I grabbed a flashlight and hit the spotlight, catching 3 teenagers with gasoline and matches. My shout froze them. They dropped everything and confessed Deborah had paid them to torch the fields, promising to cover any trouble. The sheriff cuffed them, shaking his head. This wasn't petty Anna Marie, it was criminal. Deborah had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. The town erupted. By morning, everyone knew Deborah had orchestrated vandalism and attempted arson. The sheriff confirmed charges, including conspiracy and felony endangerment. Her HOA allies abandoned her, claiming ignorance. Clara's team set up a field office in the community center, their SUVs a stark reminder of who held power. Residents, once swayed by Deborah, now supported me, hosting events for farmland preservation and donating to the Veterans Program. Deborah hired a slick city lawyer, filing absurd counterclaims against me for entrapment and defamation. Clara's office crushed them, and the judge tossed the case. Her lawyer quit, and foreclosure signs soon marked her lavish home. Her SUV was repossessed, her status erased. She became a pariah, moving away to escape her ruined reputation. Life on the farm healed. The fields recovered, bolstered by grants and donations. The Veterans Program expanded with a greenhouse and education center, drawing more veterans and families. Festivals brought the community together, children playing where Deborah once schemed. A plaque at the farm's entrance read, "This land is protected by community strength and quiet defiance." In quiet moments, I reflected on the fight. The land wasn't just crops, it was resilience, history, and community. A boy's drawing of me as a hero, standing tall in the fields, captured it all. Deborah thought she could control what was bigger than her. She failed. The fields grew, the community thrived, and the roots of this land proved stronger than her arrogance. As the sun set over the golden corn, I knew we'd won not with fury, but with truth, patience, and the unbreakable spirit of those who stand their ground.